At the film's outset, we meet Andy and Kay, a couple with their 1-year-old daughter Rosie, surviving in a world overrun by a virus that transforms people into zombies within 48 hours. Seeking safety, they take refuge on a houseboat in rural Australia. While scouting for supplies one evening, Andy glimpses 2 children playing by the riverbank. He attempts to engage with them, but their father, noticing Andy, brandishes a revolver, prompting Andy to move along. The family relies on marine resources, fearful of venturing onto land due to the virus's dangers. Later on, Kay expresses concern about their dwindling food supplies and suggests venturing onto land for better provisions. However, Andy pushes back, fearful of the unknown dangers on land. Soon after, Andy stumbles upon an abandoned sailboat along the riverbank and ventures inside to scavenge for food and wine. While exploring, he hears peculiar sounds emanating from a closed door. Despite his curiosity, Andy opts not to take any chances and quickly returns to their boat. He hands over the acquired supplies to Kay, who expresses doubt about their safety. Andy, wanting to reassure her, manages to convince Kay that everything is under control. Later, Kay insists that Andy takes a break and takes matters into her own hands, heading to the abandoned sailboat in search of more supplies. Unaware of the danger Andy sensed earlier, Kay enters the yacht alone, driven by greed. There she encounters an unknown entity, likely a zombie, and gets bitten. Meanwhile, Andy is awakened by Rosie's cries and sets out to find Kay. He follows a trail of bloodstains and discovers Kay in distress, trying to stem the bleeding from a bite on her knee. Inside a rucksack retrieved from the yacht earlier, Kay finds a bracelet that counts down an infected person's time, and an infusion that eases the transition into a zombie without pain. Andy and Kay have a heart-to-heart, where Kay opens up about her vulnerabilities to the family. This emotional conversation leads them to make the tough decision to leave the safety of the houseboat and seek medical aid. In a parallel scene, we are introduced to Thumi, a young Aboriginal girl, who is seen doodling in a sketchbook before disposing of a dead rabbit in a hole, seemingly feeding something. Back with Andy and Kay, they come across a nearby car and narrowly evade a zombie as they speed away. Taking a break during their journey, Andy checks a map while Kay tends to Rosie's diaper. Suddenly, Kay collapses, vomiting blood, but Andy quickly rushes to her side and soothes her. As Kay's transformation into a zombie progresses, Thumi throws a snake into the hole once more, but this time, there's no response. Meanwhile, Kay regains consciousness and inspects her wound, which oozes yellow sludge. She confronts Andy, furious that he kept her transformation a secret. Worried about infecting Rosie, Kay's maternal instincts kick in. Despite the tension, Andy manages to calm her down and convinces her to follow him. To prevent any further escape attempts, he breaks the doorknob. However, Andy's attention is diverted by a strange figure on the road, leading to a car crash into a tree. Hours pass, and Andy awakens to find Kay transformed into a zombie, her features marred by yellow pus. Fear grips Andy as he tries to flee with Rosie, but Kay bites him in the struggle. Eventually breaking free, Andy administers one of the injections to Kay before deciding to continue on foot, donning Kay's timer bracelet and securing Rosie to his back. Rosie's cries for her mother tug at Andy's heartstrings, but he soothes her with Kay's perfume. During a brief rest, Andy spots the person responsible for their accident, now a zombie. Ready to defend himself, he is surprised when Thumi arrives and distracts the zombie, who turns out to be her father. Thumi, knowing how to divert her father's attention, cuts her hand with a rock, luring her zombie father away with the sight of blood. As Andy continues his journey, he seeks refuge in a school where he meets Etta, a retired instructor who helps him tend to his wounds. Etta shares that the Aboriginal people in the area, including many of her former students, have departed. She insists that Andy spend the night at the school for safety. Later that evening, Andy notices a fire started by the Aboriginals and spots a woman trying to reach Thumi. During the night, Andy experiences his first seizure due to the zombie virus, vomiting blood and losing consciousness. When he wakes the next morning, Etta advises him to seek out Thumi's father, Willie, who can care for Rosie. She warns Andy to steer clear of the Aboriginals, as they eliminate any zombies or infected individuals. After their conversation, Andy sets off once again. Along the way, he pauses at some ruins to give Rosie water but encounters zombies with their heads buried in the ground. One of them emerges and begins to pursue him. Andy comes across a car and attempts to steal it, but he's intercepted by Vic, who shields him from the pursuing zombie. Vic, pinned under a tank, offers Andy the car keys in exchange for a promise to rescue him first. Andy agrees, and after relieving the pressure on Vic, he starts the car. The pair swiftly drives away, leaving the zombies behind. In the next scene, Vic takes Andy to his sanctuary, originally a gas plant outpost where Vic worked. Lorraine, Vic's wife, is pleasantly surprised to meet Andy. Vic insists that Andy leave Rosie with Lorraine so they can team up to scavenge for food and eliminate zombies. He explains that in the future, when society returns to normal, people will value money again, motivating his strategy of killing zombies and seizing their possessions. Vic attracts zombies by placing live individuals in cages as bait. However, Andy becomes upset when he sees Vic holding Thumi hostage in a cage. Inside the shelter, Lorraine cares for Rosie and tries to lift her spirits, but she discovers a yellow slime-like substance on her own belly. Vic and Andy relocate to a different cage where Vic uses organs, a radio, and blood to attract zombies, causing Andy to question his actions momentarily. After they return to the shelter, Lorraine briefly discusses cleaning up Rosie with Andy. While Andy plays with his daughter and prepares to put her in a temporary cradle, he notices his hand twitching. Overwhelmed by his deteriorating condition and relieved that Rosie is safe, Andy steps outside to a secluded spot and attempts suicide. However, Lorraine intervenes just in time, revealing that she is not Vic's wife and explaining Vic's survival by sacrificing her husband and other gas plant workers. As they converse, Vic suddenly appears and strikes Andy with the butt of his rifle. When Andy regains consciousness, he discovers he's in the same cage as Thumi. He enlists Thumi's help to escape, devising a plan involving raw guts tied to a rope to attract zombies. As the zombies pull on the rope, the door opens, allowing them to flee. They make it back to the shelter and convince Lorraine to join them. However, Vic appears and opens fire, accidentally killing Lorraine when she tries to intervene. Andy and Thumi head towards the cage Andy spotted earlier, but find it empty. They evade Vic's pursuit and spend the night in a narrow gorge. After freeing themselves from their chains, they rest peacefully. Later that night, Thumi wakes up to heavy breathing and hides with Rosie as Andy smears blood on the wall. The next morning, Andy and Thumi discuss her father's condition, and Andy gently suggests that her father may not recover. Thumi storms off in anger, but soon discovers her father's lifeless body hanging from a tree. Andy tries to console Thumi, but she remains upset and leaves. Andy, overwhelmed by his impending transformation into a zombie, experiences another breakdown and contemplates burying himself like other zombies. Meanwhile, Thumi rushes to Rosie's aid upon hearing her cry. When Andy awakens, he is surprised to find Thumi by his side, ready to help him reach the river. In the next scene, they travel by motorboat to the campground where Andy last saw the family playing. They find an RV and investigate it, but find it empty. Andy and Rosie then search for the family while Thumi stays behind. Eventually, Andy locates the father, only to discover that he has been infected in a zombie attack. The father shows Andy his loaded rifle containing 6 bullets and instructs Andy to use 2 on himself and the remaining 4 on his infected family. Despite Andy's attempts to dissuade him, the father proceeds, and Andy hears 4 gunshots in the distance as he leaves, flinching with each sound. In the aftermath of the family's tragic demise, Andy wrestles with the decision of whether to end his own life with the gun. As he contemplates, Thumi suddenly appears, expressing her readiness to return home and suggesting that Andy leave Rosie with the Aboriginals. They embark on a journey together, searching for smoke signals on a nearby hill. Along the way, they pass through a train tunnel where Vic unexpectedly confronts them. Thumi hides with Rosie in a parked truck as Andy tries to divert Vic's attention. A confrontation ensues with Andy firing shots that miss as the situation escalates in violence. After the altercation, Vic emerges from the shadows and pulls Thumi from the truck, striking her head against the rails. In the aftermath of Thumi's injury, Vic seizes Rosie while Andy, despite his injuries, checks on Thumi, who is still alive. Discovering Vic holding Rosie, Andy confronts him and demands his daughter back. Initially resistant, Vic eventually relents, returning Rosie to Andy while mourning Lorraine's death. The trio continues their journey, but Andy's transformation into a zombie becomes evident. With little time left, Andy implores Thumi to promise to care for Rosie, bidding them farewell. Concerned about harming others, Andy covers his mouth with a guard, secures his wrists, and places meat on a stick. As his transformation progresses, Andy loses consciousness, now a zombie devoid of emotions. Despite this, he carries the two children on his back, drawn by the scent of the flesh on the stick. Eventually, they reach the Aboriginals' camp, where Andy is captured by the warriors. Meanwhile, Thumi and Rosie hailed by her mother. As a warrior prepares to strike Andy with a spear, Thumi intervenes. She then spritzes Kay's perfume bottle one last time. The aroma briefly brings Andy back to awareness, reminding him that Rosie is safe. Thumi, understanding his plight, allows the warrior to end Andy's suffering. In the closing scene, the Aboriginal people are depicted journeying to a shelter, warmly welcomed by fellow tribe members. Thumi and her mother examine Rosie, discovering the words "thank you" written in white paint on her tummy. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more content, turn on notifications, and leave a like to support the channel. Thank you for watching.